things he's doing. He was about to step, and my CEO asked him, "When you leaving, you didn't ask the minister for money?" He said, "No, I'm well funded." So that's to tell you that we are funding LACC, we are funding GAC. GAC is currently doing a lot of the payroll audit. They're doing also the domestic debt audit. So a lot of things happening in that space. Significant improvements happening in procurement. Today, all beneficial owner information is disclosed on the website. So this is important that the media is here. We're talking here about the fight against corruption. These are the things that we're doing. Okay, these steps were never here in the last 10, 15 years, never. Today, anybody who has a government contract, you can go online and source that information, see who is this person, whether there's conflict of interest. We are requiring that all that information is disclosed publicly. Okay? There's e-procurement coming up. And PFM reform, we've done a lot of work in wage reform and all of that. We'll show some slides later. But let's go to the constraints and the difficulties. And this is where we want to spend most of our time also in discussing this. One of the big things right now is, what do we do with LACC? In the last 4 or 5 years, 6, 7 years, we've been talking about giving LACC prosecutorial power. Right now, there's a deadlock about whether we should give LACC prosecutorial power or not. And I think the speaker may say one or two things about that. At the national legislature, I believe, and the government believes that LACC having prosecutorial power enhances our reputation that we have nothing to fear, and we want LACC to go out there and do what they have to do under the law. So we're putting our weight behind that, but some of the legal people are saying there are legal ramifications since they may undermine the Ministry of Justice. The argument is that because the Ministry of Justice was not prosecuting in the first place, that's how we got to the point that we wanted LACC to do the prosecution. So, Mr. President, this is the standard we face. We hope we can resolve that soon. The IMF program has this as the most important governance trigger, that if we fail, the fund will downgrade us, that we are not ready for our fight against corruption. So I'm just putting that out there. Structural changes in operationalizing decentralization is also a challenge. We seem to be good in expressing our ambition in decentralizing. Developing the structure to make that happen is falling behind that ambition. All right, so we need to bring the ambition to decentralize along with the structural changes that need to happen. So, for example, we need to do payroll in all of the counties. It seems like we don't want to do the payroll. Everybody from the counties coming back to center. We need to spend some time talking about how do we move the structure along with the ambition. In corruption also, the number of prosecutions continues to be low. You'll see that in the detailed presentation. I mean, one of the issues is that, when I go to the U.S. Treasury Department, I get a lot of fight on the corruption thing. We go back and forth. We say, well, you've not had any convictions. Okay, so the argument is that the judiciary is independent. It's not like we can tell the judiciary, convict Samuel Weah or convict John Brown. You can't tell the judiciary to look at arguments and look at evidence. So we want to look at structurally, why is it that when we take a case to court, we don't win the case, and we don't come up with many convictions, or that even the number of prosecutions are fewer because evidence is strong. This is where the whole audit, the quality of the audit along with the judicial process have to be aligned. But this is something that's a challenge and we need to improve. We need to take more people to court and we need to convict. How we get there and what are the changes, I think this is where the conversation is going. All right, so those are some of the constraints I highlighted. And I was just overshot. Now we go to donor funding. All of this thing will only happen when we have money. Once we have resources and we spend our resources effectively, as the Swedish ambassador just said, who spoke for the partners, the need to align our resources to the objectives of the PAPD cannot be overemphasized. Here, we look at funding that we've seen since 2018 to 2019. I think it's a little bit delayed. Okay, yeah. So here, no, this is not the first. This is not the first slide. This is the technical people are having some. There should be one before this. Yeah. Okay. You put it on. You seeing it? Yes. Yeah, but no,
Which I fish?
It's a total of, the slide, okay, the slide says, yes, you see a look and half thing. Okay, so this is so government was a donor, the president has that. So we're trying to look at the pool of resources that we've had in the last 4 years. Maybe a few resources coming before that time. I understand, some projects that were going to finish back maybe 2 years earlier, but most of them from 2018, 2019. On the government side, how much money has passed through the government budget to do all of our development work, and how much money has coming through programs with our development partners. Here you're looking at the donor part. It says 2.1 billion. This means that this 2.1 billion doesn't mean that all of this money was spent in the last 4 years. It means these are monies that are in the works. Some spent, some could be spent over the whole development stage, 2.1 billion. On the government side, we can say most of that money has been spent because that's money that came through the budget. Okay, so about 1.6, the figure is not showing that, but it's 1.6 billion. So 1.6 billion should be on the government side, representing 44%, 2.1 billion on the donor side. So that's the totality of resources, and that raises the question. Yes, sir.
It's very important to listen to Johnson, Ambassador Johnson, the talk about transparency,
yes,
accountability,
yes,
and corruption.
That's right.
Based on that, when you are projecting, you have to be accurate numbers. Asking questions so we can know. So please, we now see 2 billion, 150 a billion per thousand, you see 1 point. So,
thank you, sir.
3 billion, sir.
So, thank you, sir. Yeah. So the president said the 2 billion. Okay, on the donor side, we have 2,150,905,286 dollars. And 83 cents. So that's the full thing for the public out there. People want to hear. So that's what 2.1 billion was saying. So it's 2,150,000,000. On the government side, we see 1,675,106,000. So that's the money that passed through the government. Let me say first, most of that money is really financing recurring expenditure. So it's not that you see that money like, when you take the wage bill, before we rationalize the wage bill was very elevated. So you're looking at around $315 million per year. If you multiply 315 million times 4 years, that's almost more than 1 billion in salary already. So our money is already gone just in salary. By the time you put fuel, gas, and all the other goods and services, you left small space for infrastructure spending. So when you see the government side, don't think that we have 1 billion to finish all of our roads. So it's the money that we really use to run the government. On the donor side, 2.1 billion is programmatic money where the donors are bringing money to help health, education, infrastructure, energy, all the lanyard. So that's the total resource we look at on the PAPD. Let's move next. The next slide says, how is this money coming? So we split this into 2 parts. We said last Friday we signed with the World Bank a 40 million grant and loan. So 20 million, I heard some of the media people saying 40 million loan. It's 20 million loan and 20 million grant. Anytime we sign with the AFTB or the World Bank, it's a grant and a loan thing. Yeah, that's how we do it. So that 40 million means we have a program with the World Bank. The government and the World Bank will set up a project management unit. It is that partnership between the government through the project management unit that will go and execute the project. So government is working with the development partner in that set that we know. So that the number under that, the money amount under those kind of partnership between government is around $1,051 million change. On the other side, we have around $1 billion, 99 million where we don't have the project management setup, where it's the development partners exclusively, they control that money. Doesn't come to the government. Government doesn't have a framework like that. So, I mean, in the conversation, we can say, is that model really, really transformative for the development back of the country? When we talk about accountability, how do we discuss accountability under this framework, as the Swedish ambassador said, where $1 billion comes under the partners, but the government is not aware how these flows are going, and then another $1 billion, the government is aware. So do we need to change that model? I mean, everything we do is about money. And so money matters here. Let's go to the next slide. Good. Yeah, we want to end this summary by looking at some of the trends that we've seen in the last 3-4 years. When we came to office, these are the trends. So you look at the orange curve on the top. The curve on the top is government revenue. The curve below is government wages, how much money we have spent on paying public sector workers. In this first space, where you see, in this quadrant, this is where this is revenue. So at here, we're around 2014, revenue dips, revenue goes up, revenue continues to go down. But that's all right. Despite fluctuations in government revenue going up, coming down for all this period, look at the wage. The wage bill is still remaining what? In fact, the wage bill is going up slightly. Whether revenue comes down, wage is constant. Governments of the past did not care about this relationship. When the president took him to office, the president started to pay attention to this relationship. But if we don't have sufficient money, how is it that we will not address our wage issue? Sooner or later we will collapse. Because you can see right here, the wage curve and the revenue curve coming into each other. They come into marriage. So that sooner or later, the only thing you will do is to pay government workers and sit down home. You have nothing to do. So this is where we have all of the crisis. All right, and this is where the massive reforms under President Weah, under the PAPD were happening. You can see this thing happening. We said, look, we don't want this going forward. Once the president, the legislature approve the reforms, look what's happening. You see the divergence. Revenue going up north, wage coming down a little bit and remaining flat. So you can deploy the rest of the fiscal space to infrastructure. This is the game-changing macroeconomic public financial management that has happened under the PAPD, under His Excellency Dr. George Management. Folks, you will write books and articles about this. Now, why is this happening now when we have fewer resources and this didn't happen here? That's a question of all of us. When we talk about corruption, what the story says is that you cannot be talking about corruption here, because it is here we see more fiscal discipline. The argument of corruption looks like it should be happening here more, and not here where we see the divergence. All right, so let's move to the next slide. Talking about corruption, let's see the next one. This is the audit of the consolidated account. I talked a lot about audit because we have regularized our audit regime. The GSC is independent, we have completed audits, and we're trying to see what story is this audit telling us as Nigerians, as development partners. So the consolidated account is a government revenue account where all the monies come, and by public law, public financial management law, the GSC should audit that. Let's look at the 4 last audits, and what is the story? The audit in February 2016-2017 issued an opinion of a disclaimer. The auditors say when they disclaim something, it means it is so messy they cannot even make sense out of it. They don't want to touch it. That is the audit report that came out of 2016-2017. We should have been having protests on this audit report, because what they're saying there, the whole government system is so messy, there's no financial data, there's no reliable way for us to even begin assessing. So we disclaim, we disown ourselves from it. We don't want to be part of it. That's what we're having in 2017. No information provided, it's a disclaimer. The disclaimer label is the worst label in auditing. At this time, I don't know whether we're having the discussion of corruption in the way we're having it now. We moved to 2017-2018. The auditors say we move from a disclaimer to adverse opinion, meaning we go to the next better stage. We have information now we never used to have. We're trying to make sense. So Ambassador De La Rue, I see you warming up. You are very outspoken. This is particularly important for you to look at. The American ambassador is not here. I would have loved him to be here. So we look at this together and see what story is this telling. Okay? This says 88 million. We could not provide vouchers for 88 million for the fiscal year 2017. So the auditors, they didn't have information for 88 million US dollars. Now, 2017, 2018 is run by President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and President Weah. Based on the history, we believe most of this data here is belonging to the old side. But we can have that debate. Let's move on to 2018, 2019, where it is President Weah himself. President Ellen Johnson study had nothing to do with 2018, 2019. What the audit say? They say adverse opinion. We can't find document for 4.5 million. So we move from 88 million documentation, we come to 4.5 million. Yes, we want to be able to provide this document and explain what happened here, but this is a radically different picture. This picture is not telling you that there is no transparency or we can't find financial reporting. It's telling you it looks like it's trending downwards, it's going down. But we come to 2019, 2020. We still have adverse opinion. And the number that we can see document for is 881,000. This that the previous administration did not do. So when people are talking about quote-unquote sanctions, quote-unquote corruption as a narrative, it is wrong. It is not backed by the data. It is no evidence-based. We are presenting to the world that this is the story of audit. We wager that when the next audit, the 2020, 2021 come, this number here, technically, the goal as Minister of Finance and my Controller General is that we have to have zero. All documents will have to be provided because we are now improving the financial document management system. So that's a good story there. Good. Next. So bottom line, in conclusion, now therefore, having said that, three things are important. Everything we do here, at the end of the day, if we don't have peace, if we don't have democracy, we are going nowhere. The president says, I memorized that from him on the council. I said it so much that it's stuck in my brain. He says, if there is no peace, our world will be difficult. That's a line he uses to explain to the people why peace is important. If we don't have peace in Liberia, our world will be difficult. Today, Ukraine does not have peace. What do we know? The world is probably more than difficult. The world has been destroyed. That war has wiped out decades of progress made by Ukraine. Ukraine is one of the major suppliers of wheat in the whole world. That has been thrown out by that war. So what it says is that no matter what we do, we have to consolidate our peace. We have to pay attention to our national security. We have to pay attention to our democracy. And in this space here, there is no president who has done better than the president who is chairing this national steering committee. Next, we have to reduce poverty. That's why we launched the PAPD. The ambassador said the trend, you heard the ambassador, it's not me saying that, I'm paraphrasing him. The Swedish ambassador said the trend going from 2022 looks like poverty will be coming down. He's seeing the data. I too have seen the data. Yes. The trend is that poverty got a little worse because of COVID and all the supply chain difficulties and the macroeconomic shock. But when we look at the slope of the poverty curve, it is going down relative to last year. And so what he's saying, if we sustain the recovery, meaning hoping that COVID doesn't come back, Ukraine influence diminishes over time, and we sustain our macroeconomic gains and we make investments, there is no reason why the poverty curve will not continue to come down. Yeah, some of the things we control, some of it we do not control, like Ukraine war or COVID. We can pray to God that these things go away and we continue to dig deeper into our effort. So we have to reduce poverty. And then also, analogous to that, we have to create jobs. Jobs are being created, but not at a systematic rate. We are working with the World Bank to even now measure. It's a conversation happening with the government and the World Bank on better measuring the jobs that are being created. A technical team is being put together so that we're able to capture this statistic better. We don't have it now. I believe in 2 years we'll make measured progress to be able to announce to the word job creation numbers in Liberia reliably. I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Minister of Finance, Mr. Samuel Detour, doing an overview here of the proposed agenda for development and prosperity. So folks, that's how we come to the end of this coverage. After here, there will be an indoor session that will be held, and so we just want to say thanks for following, and that's how we bring this coverage to an end.